Welcome back to the Poor Sports Podcast. We're back again.
It's us, Terry Gross.
We got a lot of topics today.
What if you and I were combined the minds behind Terry Gross?
Who's Terry Gross? I don't
You
even
don't know.
No,
She's
I
a great interviewer for NPR.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, the way that you said that sounded like NPR.
Yeah,
she's like NPR voice.
She's like she's got to be 1,000 years old lady that is just interviews everybody, and she's like incredible interviewer and like challenging interviewer, but also definitely not us that's behind. We're not the minds behind Terry Gross.
We're everything we talk about today probably wouldn't fly on NPR.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, there was some big topics today, some meaty topics. This week, a lot of people said things in sports that they should never say.
Some bad boys out there.
A lot of nefarious things.
We started drinking again on the podcast.
Yeah, we did.
I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Vote, folks.
It's been many weeks since we've done this.
Yeah.
Of course, we tackle our heaviest subjects on the day that we're drinking. That can't be good.
Yes.
But I feel like we did them justice. We talk a little bit about Trevor Bauer for some reason. That's another good example of a person that
it was all controversy.
It's all controversy.
In fact, there's topics that we did not talk about.
No, it was all controversy.
Have a lot of controversy.
Yeah, a lot of controversial sports topics, all national ones. Last week, I know if you listened last week, thank you, first of all.
Yeah.
But last week was very heavily focused on the Pacific Northwest.
Yes.
This week, we're all back to national topics. If you enjoyed last week, if you enjoy this week, if you enjoy the podcast in general, make sure you go review and subscribe. Again, that's the lifeblood of podcast. So we would appreciate it. And I am Alex SSN everywhere you can find me.
Yeah, I'm the Casey McLean. Also, by the way, May 26th, we'll talk about this early in the podcast, but I'll make sure it's obvious now. May 26th, Bickerson's Brewhouse, Renton, Washington. I'm headlining. I'm bringing, actually, funny enough, I'm bringing the comic we will mention in this podcast, Greg Beechler's featuring, and another buddy of mine.
The one you make fun of.
The one I shit on him for
like 10
minutes.
straight minutes.
Yes, he's opening. So if you like this podcast and you want to see that guy do comedy, he's very funny. Greg Beechler, come on out May 26th at Bickerson's Brewhouse. Not sure on the time yet. It's either going to be 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. You're from Renton, or you lived in Renton for a long time.
I did.
Is 9 p.m. going to work in Renton?
You'd rather be 8.
Okay. I will email the booker.
Otherwise, people will get out of there at 9 and be like, wow, everything's closed.
Yeah, okay. All right. And June 25th, headlining the new Tacoma Comedy Club. I have other shows in between.
I'll be there too, yeah.
Yeah, Yes, you'll be there. Maybe at both. Maybe I'll squeeze you into both of these places. You'll be at the one at Tacoma.
I have a hookup for the other one.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I feel good about the Renton one, but yeah, I'll definitely be at the one at the Tacoma Comedy Club too.
Yeah, and keep an eye out. Bickerson's Brewhouse, potentially a host of future related events, we'll say. And then I have other shows that I'm headlining. One in Eatonville that we talk about briefly, in a caboose, maybe. I got to figure out some details. Might be in the caboose of a train. DKCMcLean.com for stand-up dates. Take it away.
Thank you for listening, and enjoy the podcast. The one failed week that we had. Yeah.
What a miserable time.
I know.
I do like doing the podcast.
I do too. Yeah,
it's
I
very
like
fun.
hanging out. It's good.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
So I was telling you off the podcast, but I did a show on Sunday at Four Horsemen Brewing in Kent, in unincorporated King County. Technically, I think it's Kent, Washington. Have you ever been to this brewery?
I know the brewery, but I've never been.
Gotcha. It's right by what used to be called Pacific. No, I think it used to be called Pacific Raceway, and now it might be called something else.
Oh, out there at the racetrack? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very close to that, which actually my first ever, I was supposed to be an intern. I wrote one press release for them, and then something happened. I was supposed to take internships are a fucking huge scam. Alex, have we ever talked about this?
Well, in general, yes, they are. A lot of unpaid internships out there.
The biggest scam of all is, in this case, I had to take a class. So I had to pay money. I had to pay for 5 credits at Green River Community College to be an intern at that raceway. Right when it changes the name, what did the name?
That sounds like a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, it's bullshit. It's the whole country's a pyramid scheme. Some might say.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that doesn't. That's a ways out there too, man. To get out to that racetrack.
It's very close to Green River Community College.
That's
so
true. I guess
that's where I was going. So it was very close to there. I lived very close to there. It would have been very convenient. You fucked up by not hiring me as a full-time employee. People of Pacific Raceway. What is it called? Is that what it's?
I think isn't that still what it's called?
It's Raceway. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they still got the same.
Is that the?
It's in their URL and everything.
Did it used to be called something else? Maybe I'm full of no. Seattle International Raceway. That's what it was called at one time.
Okay, and now it's Pacific Raceway.
SIR.
Sure. Yeah.
It's one of those.
It's one of those misleading names because it's nowhere near Seattle. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's my dad was just telling me that there was oh shit it's all me right now on the camera. Hold on. These fucking.
That's okay.
Your wife is going to be mad at us.
No, I don't think she ever watches the YouTube.
That's good. Well, if she does, what she's going to be mad about is that I'm dealing with it on the audio. But yeah, so it's this Four Horsemen Brewing.
Yeah, it's
like outdoors. It's funny because it's the only place I've ever been where you can have like get heckled by like a chicken.
Like, so are they raising chickens on site?
Yeah, there's chickens on site. Okay. It's like somebody lives on the property, and then there's like this mostly outdoor space. They only do the comedy show like 4 or 5 months out of the year because it's an outdoor comedy show.
That makes sense.
I did you ever see any outdoor comedy during COVID, like during the pandemic?
No. We were pretty locked down.
Gotcha. Yeah. So there was a point like at the beginning where I was very locked down, and then the outdoor shows, I was like, well, once they've decided that it's like hard to transmit outdoors, I'm doing anything that's fucking allowed. Basically, That's what I pledged to myself. Then once I got the vaccine, I went buck wild and acted like a Republican, like minus that one part, right? Like that I. Anyway, so I miss outdoor shows. They were fun. I did like backyard shows.
Yeah, they're cool. I mean, if the weather is good around here, if it's summertime,
sure.
Next week would be a really good example. We're supposed to get into the 90s, so
that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, when it's good weather around here, there's no better place to be hanging out outside.
Yes, and yeah, I mean the outdoor shows are like always a unique experience. I'm doing a show. I actually don't know if it's for sure coming. I'm doing a show next month this month. Time's going fast right now, Alex. In the caboose of a train. I'm either doing that one this month or it's like a decommissioned caboose. So it's like a train car where it's like 2 seats. It's like 4 seats wide.
I feel like you could make a lot of caboose jokes.
That's possible.
I would at least try to work one in there.
It's also one of those things. It's only if it's the one I'm doing, it's only the second show I will have done. That they will have done there. And that means that nobody's had the chance to make every caboose joke. Like I have a chance to make.
So if you could somehow fuse your ass-eating joke with being in the caboose, maybe. There's potential there.
I don't know if the people of Eatonville are gonna love an ass-eating joke. My experience is that some of those folks don't love that joke. But
what kind of jokes do people in Eatonville like? If you really had to nail it down.
Yeah, so I did a show in Graham, which is probably the closest geographically I've gotten to performing in the comedy mecca that is known as Eatonville. I will say, homeschool jokes crushed out there. I used to do a homeschool joke, and then it's either Shane Torres or Sam Talent did a joke that was very similar to mine. I've never worked with either of them. I'm not saying that they stole it. Better version of my joke, like a much better. So I just stopped doing it. But while I was out there, they were like, it was crushing because there's so many homeschooled people out there. And then sometime later, I did a show in Purdy, Washington.
Oh, yeah, where the women's prison is.
Yes, and also where there's a bunch of like conservative Christians that homeschool their kids because public schools are brainwashing them into being communists, you know? And I did the homeschool joke, and it bombed. And it bombed in a way that I don't know if... tell me if you have an experience with this, like writing or on Twitter. It bombed in a way where it ruined everything that came after it. Like a woman came up to me after the show. This joke's been doing great, like around the area. I probably wasn't traveling a lot at that point, but it was like doing great regionally.
Yeah.
And she comes up to me and she's like, I thought you were really funny. You're incredibly talented. You should never do that homeschool joke again. That is very offensive. It was the first time anyone had told me they were offended by a joke of mine.
And she complimented you. It was
Yes.
Like, it was it's really bad when it's the compliment sandwich.
Yes.
You know, as an adult. When you're a child, that works. But when you get the compliment sandwich as an adult,
Yes.
you know you fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along the line, things went poorly.
Yeah. By the way, officially second bottle of Eagle Rare. We've gotten your hundreds of messages, folks, worrying that we had become a sober podcast. And I just want to assure you.
Sober for a few weeks.
Yeah, it was a long time.
It was.
I was on medication.
We were also doing a lot of daytime recordings or
true.
afternoon recordings, which, we're not against that, but
Yes.
it's bold. It's a bold move.
So a little bit of big podcast news, kind of. It should become bigger podcast news at some point. Hint, hint, folks. Live stand-up comedy show, me headlining at Bickerson's Brew House in Renton, Washington. Potentially the future site of an live event of some type. We don't need to disclose that yet, but potentially we're working out some particulars with them, or by we, I mean me.
You've already managed to work your own show in there before us. So
yes. Well, to be fair, they say they have two locations. One in Ballard, Washington.
Yeah.
That I believe seats roughly 250 people.
Yeah.
And I've seen the numbers for this podcast, and I don't have confidence that on a Tuesday we could squeeze 250 people into that location yet. Maybe one day. So keep an eye out for that, folks, especially in the Puget Sound area. Make the trek. Great beer, I assume. I've actually never been there.
I've had their beer. It's a buddy of mine that runs it.
Frank.
Yes.
Frank, I didn't realize that because Frank is who messaged me.
Yeah.
And they already do a comedy show at the Ballard location, and it's an unwritten rule in comedy. I'm not fucking stepping on any toes without asking, okay? So I asked them, I figured out who the booker was, asked them, and said, is it okay if I do a show at this other one? I think when I was like, it holds 40 people, the booker was like, yeah, do whatever you want, man.
Yeah, fine. It's literally like the Renton location is like in a strip mall next to a Jersey Mike's. So
that's like, by the way, almost every comedy club in the country is in a strip mall next to Jersey Mike's,
so you'll do great
or not Papa John's. What's the other one? Jimmy John's.
Yeah,
You got to have a quick sandwich option close to every comedy club.
The really nice thing about Bickerson's Brew House, right across the street, is a Dairy Queen, which Dairy Queens are getting harder and harder to find if you're an ice cream person.
Sure.
Great location.
Is Dairy Queen not a national thing?
It's national, but they've gone away over the years. They've died slowly. It's very sad.
What's your Dairy Queen order? Because what I didn't know when I was growing up, because we had a Dairy Queen. I grew up in Fife. We had a Dairy Queen, but it wasn't. There's like variations of Dairy Queens. And by the way, we had one in Milton, where Fife and Milton are the same school district. We had one in Milton. These are like the generic shitty Dairy Queens, I found out. There's like dairy, the like freeze jizz one or something like that. There's just like, it's like, I don't know what it's called.
Dairy freeze jizz. That's always been my
Dairy
favorite.
Freeze is also a restaurant, right?
I don't know. Maybe. I only know Dairy Queen. I grew up with Dairy
what's the
Queen.
one that's got, now I think they all have it, but there was a time when the Mr. Misty deals.
Yeah.
That was only at the special ones,
interesting.
The OG ones.
I don't even think they have those anymore, do they? The Mr. Misties? They had them at the Dairy Queen I grew up with.
I've had them within the last 2 years because what I discovered is I don't have that and Slurpees. I don't know what it is as an adult, but when I get a headache, I get like the brain freeze, but like I can't avoid it. I don't know what growing up fucking sucks, dude. I went to the fucking park with my daughter the other day, and she's like, go on the swing, Dada. And one of my wife's first dates, we went to the like Family Fun Center in Yakima. My wife went to school in Ellensburg.
Sure.
She was doing like some student teaching stuff out in Yakima. We go out to Yakima. We go to this Family Fun Center. She destroys me in putt-putt golf, which is embarrassing to admit on here. She's not a golfer, never golfed in her life, hates golf. She destroys me at the go-karts because she has a significant weight advantage, even back then, by the way. And I was a thin guy back then. And then I'm like, well, I saw a vacant school, easy to get into, perhaps commit some gang activity if you live in Yakima. And I was like, let's go check out that place. That seems fun. And we go to the school, get on the swing set. I'm like 23 years old, not that old at the time.
Did you break the swing?
No, so I wasn't fat at the time.
Okay.
I got so much motion sickness immediately. I got on this swing and I made like 6 swings back and forth with my daughter the other day. Dude, I was like ready to throw up at this park. It's embarrassing to get old.
So did you not have motion sickness as a kid? Or is this,
Never. Never.
Interesting. Yeah, my wife has severe motion sickness.
Gotcha.
Has had it her whole life.
Gotcha.
To the point where she has to take prescription drugs just to go on a plane.
Whoa.
Yeah, which
like
they make,
Dramamine, like a better version of Dramamine?
Yeah, Dramamine could work in high doses, but they have even better drugs for this sort of thing. It's a patch that you wear.
How do you do flying? Are you a good flyer?
I'm fine flying. I get anxious for my wife because like we've had situations.
If you cut her out of your life, flying would be a breeze.
No problem. I have no issues flying. I fly, I go to Las Vegas a lot, and Las Vegas is a tough place to fly in and out of because it's in the desert. You get the crosswinds, so pretty much anytime you're flying in or out of there, it's bumpy.
Sure.
And if you can fly in and out of there, you can probably fly in and out of most places without much issue.
Yeah.
So, I'm used to a rougher flight, I guess.
I think this might be the benefit of like understanding data and statistics a little bit is I just like, first off, turbulence isn't a thing. It's like a fake. It's just you're scared over nothing. It's like you're scared of going over speed bumps, basically. It's nothing. It's literally nothing. It doesn't. Turbulence does not. I mean, you always planes out of the sky.
You always see those viral videos of people that have extremely turbulent flights, right?
Yes.
Like where things are flying all over the place, and there's like somebody with a bloody forehead or something.
Sure.
But that'll happen from time to time. That doesn't typically.
I've probably been on those flights and slept through that. Like I
mean, you fly a lot, so I would imagine you're probably used to all conditions at this point.
Well, what's funny is I just have never had. I've never had like as a comic. I've never had an eventful flight really. I've had like flights get delayed, which sucks a lot. But but part of the thing is, man, is like once I fall asleep, I'm very good at staying asleep. And I had a streak of like 10 straight flights that I would fall asleep before takeoff. And dude, this is how fucked up it is my most relaxing time to fall asleep. The thing that really lulls me to sleep is when you take off and you actually are in a comfortable sleeping position. You're like laid back.
Yeah.
And oh my God, it's like a fucking white noise machine and a vibrating bed put together. It's fucking awesome.
You're like the only person I know that sleeps on flights well. I mean, people always try to, but it doesn't always happen.
I will say I don't necessarily sleep. I mean, my neck hurts when I get off. My back is sore, all that stuff. But I don't know what happened. I don't know when the switch flipped, but I have zero flying anxiety. I used to freak out all the time.
Yeah.
Nothing now. I'm literally like, to fall asleep before what a lot of people find to be the scariest part of a flight, to me is like, I'm a fucking psychopath to be able to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's tough to, I struggle to sleep on planes, man. It's not
do you get scared at any point? Like, does the takeoff or the landing, do they freak you out in any way?
Not really. I mean, only if it's real bumpy on either part. But I mean, the thought goes through my mind at certain times when we're taking off. I'm like, well, sometimes they just explode on takeoff.
Yeah.
So your mind goes to the darkest places at times.
Yeah, for sure.
But in general, no, I have no real issues flying. I've been on a lot of planes. I'm not one of those people. The people that like fly for work constantly.
Yeah.
They're like so apathetic towards flying that their plane could probably be going down and they wouldn't even notice until the bitter end.
Dude, that's probably me. Like I got earbuds in. The other day I sat in an exit row, and it's the first time in a while I've had to like not have my earbuds in from like cover to cover.
Yeah.
Like not from beginning to end of the flight. And I'm like annoyed waiting for this fucking lady to go like, give me a verbal confirmation. I'm like, yes, let me be the first one, please. Yes. Like, let me fucking, listen, if this thing's going down, we're not going out the exit door. I'll tell you that. Like it's fucking,
you are neither willing nor able.
I'm skeptical of the whole process. Is that an available answer on the multiple choice?
My thing about flying, man, I mean, not that I fly a few times a year.
Sure.
But the people that never fly are always fascinating to me, or have never flown. Like kids, whatever, but full blown adults that are like new to flying.
Yes.
I mean, I get it, man. It's a first world thing.
Did I talk about my buddy Greg Beechler on the last podcast? He's a diabetic guy.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I'm gonna shit on him right now.
That's what
I want you to finish your.
No, I was just saying it's fascinating to watch.
So my buddy Greg Beechler is a diabetic, and this is not his fault. But anytime he flies, he does not fly often. He's flown like I think maybe when I flew with him, it was like we flew to Austin, Texas, first time together, and then Cascade, Idaho, the second time. Boise, Idaho, and then drove up to Cascade. He's diabetic, has like the insulin pump that's attached to him like a fucking cyborg. So he can't go through the x-rays because it'll fuck up his insulin pump. So every time you get through TSA, also he has none of the expediting things. Like I have clear.
Oh, he doesn't have like TSA pre.
Doesn't have TSA pre-check because he hasn't flown since the fucking Obama administration. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he's the guy that definitely needs it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, of course he needs like pre-check and clear. So every time it's a medical, they call it like a medical pat down or something like that. So he's got to like, and then the person isn't ever there. So they have to call the person over. They have to do this thing. I'm fucking sitting on the other side, like with his stuff. Cause you know, he was my opener in fucking Idaho, and the headliner is sitting there holding the opener's stuff, like waiting for him to get through. He's my friend. Okay. He's not just my opener, but it's not what you imagine when you're fucking headlining a show. And then we get into the airport and he's diabetic. So he buys a fucking orange juice to help regulate his blood sugar.
Sure.
And we get onto the, we're like about to board and it's a red eye flight. I very commonly will take either a red eye flight or the first flight out in the morning. Those are like the two. Red eye flight there, like the latest I can possibly leave there, earliest I can get out of town. That's for comedy stuff. For other stuff, for vacation stuff, maybe not. But anyways, so it's like midnight. We're getting on this plane, and I'm like, he's like, oh, I fucking forgot my orange juice. And I'm like, where? And he goes, oh, it's at my seat where I was sitting, like in the boarding area. I'm like, go fucking grab it. He's like, no, we're boarding. I'm like, dude, we're in like group fucking B. You're 8 feet away from it. Go grab your goddamn orange juice.
He's gone too far.
Dude, he's like on the plane having a fucking diabetic emergency. He got his orange juice and he took it and that fucking solved the problem.
Yeah.
But it's like without that, he might be like, is there a doctor in the house? And Greg Beechler, my friend, very funny comedian by the way, but an awfully irresponsible diabetic. We go to Texas to fucking Austin. We get to the hotel the first night. We've like, had a good day, ate, drank, all that stuff. And he's, I'm counting on him to figure out how to deal with his insulin. This isn't my responsibility in any way. He's an adult. He fucking he's like, oh man, I don't have any sugar. I'm like emptying sugar packets from the free coffee, like it's cocaine, and he's fucking, dude. And then when we were in Cascade, Idaho, he drank. He normally drinks like straight liquor.
Yeah,
and he drank 5 beers. Which, listen, man, maybe this is there's an exhibit line, an exhibit lyric where he says, I can drink a whole Hennessy fifth. Some call that a problem, but I call it a gift. I can drink 5 beers, roll on with the weekend. Like I'm fine the next day, right? I golf the next morning. I text him, I get done golfing 9 holes and I'm like coming back to the hotel and I'm going to go golf 9 more. And he's like, dude, I haven't been out of the bed. I've been throwing up all morning. I was throwing up all night. Because he fucking fucked up his stupid insulin. He's got the automatic thing. Just push the go button and go. And
we're not going to gain many diabetic fans from this episode.
Listen, followed Greg Beechler's not having he doesn't have a podcast because he can't figure out how to keep his blood sugar in the right place and anyways, yeah, I had to go buy him. But the point of this is that I had to go buy him. Oh man, actually, I'm going to shit on him some more. So I go buy him like a care package. I spent like $40 to make his blood sugar right at this the one store in Cascade, Idaho, right? Yeah. I got like orange juice that's from the fucking like Russian, from the USSR. Like this shit's been around for a while. I'm getting him anti-nausea medication, the one that plugs your butthole up. I don't know. I'm trying anything I can. Because also like the other thing about this is, first off, he says it's food poisoning. And I made the mistake of it's a 2-show weekend, 2 nights, hotel, restaurant are attached physically and as businesses. So I'm coming down and they're like, how's Greg? And I'm like, oh, he's not feeling good. He thinks he has food poisoning. Well, the only place we ate was at this fucking restaurant. And they're like, no, I'd fucking eat that. Like, and I'm like, okay, I didn't mean to create like a fucking 5-alarm fire.
Way to go, man.
Yeah, I didn't mean to do that. So anyway, I go get him all this shit, and then I come back, and his girlfriend is, I think, hates him also, just like I do. The same way we both love him and hate him at the same time.
Wait, is his girlfriend there this whole time?
No, she's.
I was gonna say, man.
No, dude, no. So she's like, thank you so much. Sends me like a message on Instagram or something like that. Thank you so much for taking care of Greg. I really appreciate it. I made you. She makes sourdough bread at home, like every millennial in the.
Is that good for him?
That's not good for him, no. But she goes, I made you.
She's slowly trying to kill him.
Yeah. She goes, I made you a loaf of sourdough bread. Greg will bring it to you. Greg throws it in his fucking work truck. It rots in his work truck before it ever gets to me. Greg, you fucked up at every turn in this story. I have no sympathy for you as a diabetic.
This started with him being a bad flyer and turned into him being bad at everything.
Well, my God, the guy, I'm like, both flights, I had to like literally just book for both of us because it's, he's my wife in this equation, apparently. My wife doesn't fly a lot, but my wife is not a professional stand-up comedian, okay?
Yeah.
If we're going somewhere, of course, I will be the one taking care of this. But this guy's lived all over the place. He lived in Colorado, Detroit, Spokane, Seattle. Like, apparently, he drove to every one of these destinations originally. I think he said he'd flown like 3 or less times in his life.
Wow. He needs to get good enough at comedy so he can have like the Madden bus. How John Madden used to just take his own bus all around the country.
Yes,
He needs the Madden bus.
Yes. Is Tony Kornheiser afraid of flying also? Is that something that...
I don't know. He might be.
I believe I was watching PTI with my dad today, and he's not in studio still, which I respect.
He's just, hey, if I'm Tony Kornheiser's age, I'm working remote.
Yeah.
You guys can.
I'm my age and I'm like, I'm working remote.
No,
what the
of
fuck?
course. The whole world should be working remote. There's no reason we need to go back to offices.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
I agree. I did, my dad and I had a fun conversation today because he was like, I was talking about Griffey and Peyton meeting up at that thing that we were talking about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Where they both just look like middle-aged men, like appropriate middle-aged men. They look great for their age.
Yes.
They look fine for their age. They look the way they should look for their age is exactly how
if you didn't know they were pro athletes, you would be like, those guys are in really good shape for their age. For their age.
Yeah.
But like you'd be like, oh, that I didn't think he was that old,
Sure.
He looks much younger.
Yeah. Something about not cracking, I've heard. But so I was talking about, they look like, the normal, they're like gray hair they look perfectly good for their age. And I was like, we were talking about both of them, and I was like, I got to figure out a way to meet Griffey at some point in my life. Like, that's a goal. It's like when, like, people want to meet Tiger Woods, they want to meet fucking Peyton Manning or somebody like that. My guy's Griffey. I'd love to meet him. And he's like, everything I've heard, like, he's bringing news to me on this. He's like, everything I've heard is that he's like kind of a dickhead. And I was like, yeah, but can you imagine my dad? I was like, imagine if you became a multimillionaire and everyone wanted to talk to you. Do you think you wouldn't also be an asshole? He's like, I think I'd be worse. And I was like, yeah, that's why I relate to him more now. Now that I'm an adult, I relate to him way more than I did when I was a kid.
I would have to think too, like after these guys retire and they don't have the same number of people coming after them every time they step out in public, your chances of having a pleasant interaction would be much higher now.
Yes. I think it's like, it's also tough with Griffey specifically because he's almost like a child actor where he was like in the spotlight literally as a kid and then as quote unquote the kid, his nickname when he became a Mariner at 19 or when he made it to the bigs at 19.
Yeah, Peyton at least went to college and stuff like that. Like he lived, and he wasn't a superstar, like he kind of worked his way into becoming a really, really good player. But
did he he went to Oregon State, is that right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine Gary Payton in Corvallis, Oregon?
It doesn't seem right. No,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm way too young to remember his time in college, but even when you see pictures of him in an Oregon State uniform, it looks all wrong.
Yeah.
Because Oregon State sucks, man. Like, no offense to Oregon State. They're not like, it's not like anyone hates Oregon State. They're like the most apathetic team.
Even seeing like Chad Johnson went to Oregon State.
Yeah.
And you're like, he even went to a team with the same
colors.
And you're like, it feels weird that he went to Oregon State,
It just doesn't feel right now.
Yeah, here's Gary Payton. I'm gonna do this for the audience. This is Gary Payton at Oregon State.
There he is. Doesn't look right.
Does not look right. All right, folks, we did it. Let's get into some of these topics.
All right. Good transition.
Good transition. We did it.
A nice hard segue.
Okay, so there's a couple of these that I think I wanna.
A lot went down this week.
Yeah, we can. So Jackson Mahomes got arrested, which I don't even care to talk about.
A lot of nefarious stuff. No, I have a buddy that really hates Jackson Mahomes.
Okay.
So he doesn't listen to the podcast as far as I know, but hates Jackson Mahomes.
He's annoying.
He's annoying. It's the kind of thing that you're like, obviously you feel bad for any victims.
Sure, of course.
It's technically like sexual assault or something.
Yeah, it's the same thing where he kissed the woman against her will, which is not good.
He kissed a woman in a restaurant.
Yes.
And she decided she was going to press charges, I guess.
Right.
Which obviously she has the right to do. She didn't want to be kissed by this weird looking dude. And he did it. And but if you follow Jackson Mahomes and you know how annoying he is, kind of like seeing this happen to him. You're like, this is the kind of guy that just needs to get some of this.
Yeah, he's not like Andrew Tate, but he's got the same lack of likability as Andrew Tate, where you're like, I hope that Andrew Tate didn't sexually traffic women, because I don't want women to be sexually trafficked. But if anybody was going to be arrested, he's the least sympathetic figure to be arrested. Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah, it's exactly the type of guy that.
Yes.
Jackson Mahomes he's not doing as bad a stuff as Andrew Tate is allegedly, but every time you see that guy pop up on whatever social media you use, you're like, this fucking guy again.
Yes. Okay, so a more maybe serious, interesting topic is Trevor Bauer made his debut in Japan, has not pitched professionally, I think, in 2 years. So Trevor Bauer, to give my synopsis of him as a person and a player, and we could talk about his transgressions also, but he's a guy that came up, drafted by, I believe, Arizona, pitched at UCLA, drafted by Arizona, and was kind of like, not a malcontent in that he was like fucking up off the field, but he's got a very specific understanding of the way baseball works and wants to do things his way. Sometimes those things go against what the team wanted him to do. He had a lot of friction with the team. He ends up getting traded to Cincinnati. In Cincinnati, he becomes acquainted with a guy named Kyle Boddy. Kyle Boddy or Boddy? I think it's Boddy. Kyle Boddy.
Sure, that sounds right.
Owner of Driveline Baseball, which is actually in Kent, Washington.
Kent, yeah.
A guy who, by the way, I'll tell this story now because I don't have any aspirations to write about fucking sports again. I played in Puget Sound Senior Baseball League with Kyle Boddy, and I didn't play. We didn't play on the same team, but we were at the same tryout. And I've never met a more egotistical asshole at that tryout for a guy that's like shaped like me now. I was like, this piece of shit. And then I read this.
And this is the old man baseball league. I mean, that's the
thing. It is. I mean,
I
was 21.
Right. You can play. It's like, I think they say 18 and up, right?
At the time, it was 21 and up. It might be 18 and up now.
Either way, it's like you could be as young as like college age, or you could be like an 80-year-old playing in this league. It's basically just, I guess technically it would be considered semi-pro. But it's
crazy, but yes, it is considered semi-pro,
yeah,
which is wild, because you pay to play.
Yeah, it's the lowest level of semi-pro you could possibly get.
To call it semi-pro is an insult to anything, any sport that's semi-pro. But so he's like talking about, because he went to, I think, Rice. I mean, I could probably pull this up, but I don't even care to.
Did he play baseball there? Rice is a pretty good baseball school.
Yeah. Well, let's look him up. Let's see.
We're just gonna go off on Driveline.
It's gonna come around.
I have no ties to Driveline, but they are like a cult now. I mean, really, they're kind of.
Baldwin Wallace University. This says so. Whatever.
That's not a real.
I don't know if that's. Yeah, it's not. It's in Berea, Ohio. Berea, Ohio. Anyways, there's a redemption to this, which is, so he's like a huge asshole. He's like, oh, when I played in college, and I'm like, who gives a fuck? We're all trying out for the same fucking league right now. Like, who fucking cares? Anyways, I read the book, The MVP Machine, which is about a variety of things, one of them being the Houston Astros, but one of them being Boddy and Bauer in Cincinnati. And it talks a lot about the life struggles that he has and the low self-esteem.
That Boddy has, or Bauer?
Yeah, that Boddy has. And the low self-esteem that he had, and he battles with depression and shit like that. And it made him, I mean, of course it's a book that is probably aiming to paint him in a somewhat positive light because of the things that he's doing. Gave me some pause. I'm telling the story now, so not enough pause.
Yeah.
But I to a large degree, like I've at the time I was like, fuck this guy. I don't like him. But I have friends that are in baseball stuff and they like go to fucking visit him there. And it's every part of me wants to be like, fuck that guy. He's a piece of shit. But then I read that and I was like, okay, well, everything that he was doing to me fits with someone who's like dealing with depression.
Yeah. And a baseball field during a tryout is like the most heightened situation.
Everyone's dick measuring.
Yeah, it's just a big dick measuring contest. Even if you get along with people, there's always an element of competition. So you probably met him in like the worst possible arena for him to showcase himself. If there
was a Coors Light or a Coors Field for being an asshole where the air was light and the ball flew far, the asshole ball. Asshole ball would, I don't want to put swear words in the title, but asshole ball is a very provocative title. If the asshole ball flew further, this was Coors Field. Yeah. And but so anyway, Trevor Bauer goes to Cincinnati, and then he signs a short-term contract, a 3-year. I believe at one time I heard him say that he just wanted to sign 1-year deals over and over and over again. He didn't want to be committed to a team for a long time. I think maybe some of that might be a reaction to his experience in Arizona. He signs a 3-year deal with the Dodgers, and 1 year into that deal gets accused of like sexually abusive behavior. And I think that all the charges were dropped. And this is like where I think we have a tough time as a comedy podcast dealing with a topic. All the charges were dropped, but he was suspended by Major League Baseball like kind of indefinitely. And then it became essentially what would become a 2-year suspension at the end of it. At the end of his 2-year suspension, his contract with the Dodgers was I actually don't think it was up. I think
he's still suspended. Or if he's not still suspended,
the Dodgers released him.
Yeah,
you're sweating, and I can't tell if it's because of the diciness of the topic.
No, I'm sweating because
we gotta get a fucking quieter air conditioner in here. We need what we need is a fucking thermometer on the wall.
Well, I know that in the downstairs part of your house, it's 72 degrees. And when we leave here, it's about at least 10 degrees cooler.
Sure.
So that is the situation we're working with here, people.
We're bringing an amazing podcast to you, sacrificing our
next week
health.
Could be real dicey.
Yeah, well, we'll see what's...
We'll see how that goes. But no, I think, the Bauer situation was... It's all bad. I mean, one of the things you remember about him before all of this off the field stuff happens is when he's playing in Cleveland and he's about to get pulled from the game and he turns around and he throws the ball over the center field fence before Terry Francona can come out and pull him.
I forgot he even played in Cleveland.
Yeah, so he comes out there, he chucks the ball over the fence, and then later on online, he's an active person on Twitter for a long time. Anytime someone critiques him, he basically sicks an entire army of people against them, and really does a lot of things that would make somebody of his stature incredibly unlikable.
Yes, and despite all that, until this happened, I had an affection for him because I do think he is a guy who is deliberate and understands baseball in a way that's like innovative. I do think...
Maybe. I definitely hear what you're saying. I mean, he's one of those like free thinker baseball types, which
it sends him down some wild roads politically, and I've never understood what the benefit of an athlete speaking out politically is. It seems like a mistake every time people do it.
For him, it's just one of those things where you cannot really tell what type of person he is leading up to these events. Like, you're right. There are people who think like you do, where he's just kind of an innovative mind, a little bit different than your typical dumb jock, in quotes. And that makes him unique and likable to some. And then there's other people that, they see him throwing tantrums on the mound. They see him being an asshole online. They don't really like him. And then he gets to LA and he has this off the field incident, which I followed this story pretty closely when it was happening. I remember reading about it, and this kind of started off as like a consensual relationship with the woman he was seeing.
Yeah.
And as time went by, it became when they would get intimate together, it would go past what they were both okay with, what she was okay with.
Sure.
And
I mean, and to give the obligatory allegedly, right? Like we don't. I mean, obviously neither of us were there. We're having a lot of problems with the stuff going on over here, and it's completely my fault. And I'm sorry to Alex's wife.
That's
and
okay.
I keep looking away, and every time I'm like, Alex's wife is turning off the podcast right now, even though she's not watching. Yeah, the obligatory allegedly, because I will say, like, the one thing in his defense is the charges were dropped. He's not facing any criminal charges for this, but he was given what is now, I think, the longest suspension in baseball history outside of an outright ban.
If you go look at all the details of the story that came out when he was going through his cases, they're bad. I mean, they're really bad. I mean,
Sure.
they in a lot of, I'm sure if a lot of people who maybe would be in less financially well off, might not be able to fight the charges the way that he did.
Sure.
Who knows? Who knows what is true and what isn't? But if you read some of the stuff that happened on this case, it sure painted him in a really bad light. And it's one of those things where, he's in Japan playing baseball, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of teams in Major League Baseball that want to deal with him.
I mean, I think that were there teams that wanted to deal with him, they would have. I think that he had the opportunity to sign with a Major League team and could not.
I mean,
so
yeah,
he's
and
playing in Japan.
And he had the reputation of being kind of a headache before all this, and now it's like, now he's not just a headache to you, the team. He's a headache because of how your fans might react to him.
Right.
And you're never going to see a Trevor Bauer bobblehead night or T-shirt night because no one's going to want to wear that shirt anymore.
Let's see. What team is he playing for? Trevor Bauer. I wonder if they do have any promotional stuff for him.
I did see he had a start this week where he just got lit up in Japan.
Sure. Which one thing about that is people are going to be like, oh, good, he deserves it. And it's like, one, I mean, who gives a shit? It's a fucking... By the way,
yeah.
Another part of this is if he did the things that he did the way they are alleged, who cares if he ever plays well again or not again, right? Like this, nothing would be as damaging or as horrific as what happened to this woman. I just want to put the thing out there, the allegedly out there, because of course, whatever, people are into shit that I'm not into. I'm pretty vanilla when it comes to stuff like that. I know people who do stuff.
You mean in the bedroom?
Yeah.
A lot of missionary in your bedroom.
We certainly aren't fucking slapping each other in the face and
right.
choking each other.
And that's kind of like, that's where this initially started. His defense was, we agreed to rough sex, and her point was, we agreed to rough sex. We didn't agree to everything you ended up doing to me.
Sure.
That kind of went beyond that threshold, and that's where this became a really complicated issue for everybody involved. Even
I just want to make it clear,
this.
I'm not defending Trevor Bauer's actions.
I don't perceive that you're doing that.
I know, but we live in a sensitive world where people will fucking... I mean, listen, there's not enough people to listen to this podcast to cancel me, so I'm going to be fine, but...
But it does require a lot of explanation. I mean, I would encourage anybody who doesn't know about the Trevor Bauer story to go look it up and formulate your own opinions on it. But I think most rational people would look at Trevor Bauer's entire body of work, not baseball necessarily work, but just everything that he's done up to this point, the way he's carried himself as a person, and probably think that this is a guy that doesn't deserve another chance. Or if he does deserve another chance, he really has to do a lot to earn that shot at redemption. He has to do a lot to prove that he's a changed person. And what we know about Trevor Bauer from his time prior to this incident in LA is that he doesn't seem to be the type of person that would want to change for anybody else.
So,
right? He's probably not going to change.
Another thing that I would say, if I was his attorney, which I don't know why I keep putting myself in this position as his attorney, but
you're not defending him, except legally.
I'm not defending. I do, I do hold a pretty large financial stake in his acquittal, but if you were someone who was not guilty, you would not apologize. Theoretically. I mean, I think that maybe some people do. And being an asshole on the baseball field or on Twitter or whatever is not a character. It's not character evidence that you would be someone who does the things he's accused of, that are the horrific things he's accused of. And again, yeah, so to me, the thing is, once the charges got dropped, and unfortunately it puts you in like the way other sports deal with this, like, is what he did worse than what Deshaun Watson did? I mean, if it depends. If everything hinges on, were there two consenting parties? Which, again, it's like who he says there were, she says there weren't. I don't know if you've heard, there's these things called he says, she says things.
Is that it?
Yeah. If this was, let's say, Peyton Manning in college, allegedly sexually assaulting someone, granted, many years ago, but maybe that doesn't get swept or maybe it gets swept under the rug because he's such a likable guy. Is that more or less acceptable? If it's Brett Favre post-career when he's made a buffoon of himself, maybe it doesn't get swept under the rug, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Trevor Bauer, he was
New Eagle Rare, by the way.
He was so unlikable prior to all this stuff going on.
Yes.
That he had he
has no goodwill.
He had no goodwill with people, and this was always going to end poorly for him, regardless of what was found in court. It was always going to end poorly for him, and probably deservedly so. I think if you look at how he carried himself, it was probably deserved that he basically got ostracized after all this was done. And yeah, man, it's a really bad situation. I mean, I don't think, again, if you go look at everything that transpired here, like, I'm sure in Trevor Bauer's mind, he did nothing wrong.
Sure.
But he's also kind of a weirdo, man. Like, we know this guy's a little, like, he's got a screw loose upstairs, or free thinker, right? Like, he could be construed in a number of different ways. But
well, yeah, I think he definitely sees the world and sees baseball in a different way than a lot of people.
But I think that might carry over off the field too, just the way he approaches life. I mean, for him, it's like as soon as he got the green light to behave the way he did in the bedroom, maybe he thought that was okay with no limit, right? Like, and I know, like, one of the things that occurred is that this woman ended up getting punched in the face twice. Like, I don't care who you are. Like, it doesn't matter how rough you're getting. No one wants to be punched in the face twice, you know, especially by a partner that they trust and care about. I can't imagine there'd be many people out there that would think that would be okay. So for him to think that way is like a little crazy.
Yeah, we got an appearance from my daughter. By the way, rough time to have an appearance from my daughter, but I think I heard her yelling. No, it's fine. We can do it on the. All right. So after a brief intermission, I'm ready to be on the wrong side of history again. So
here we go.
So, actually, I got to figure out what these guys' names are. But so there was a Barstool employee that goes by, oh my God, he's got some stupid nickname like Fitzy or something.
They all got nicknames, man. Yeah, none of them go by their real name.
Barstool fired. What's his name? Mincy.
Mincy. This was a bad week for white guys saying things they definitely should not be saying.
And then, so Glenn, I want to say it's
Glenn
Kuiper.
Kuiper, yeah.
So Mincy, whoever fucking Mincy is. By the way, can we talk about Barstool? Because one, I'll tell you this as a friend, lover and a friend. Not recently, but I've applied for jobs at Barstool, non-writing jobs at Barstool. But there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of jobs there. Yeah,
I think a lot of my writing back when I used to write could have fallen into their camp.
Sure.
Although I will say I don't align myself with much of what they do.
Sure.
At the time when they first started out, I would say that there was a place for them. I think in the last 10 to 15 years, just society has changed a lot, and they haven't necessarily changed with it.
Well, it's possible that what they've captured is the fact that society hasn't actually changed all that much in some cases, right?
Yeah. I mean, they definitely have a niche for a certain type of fan. And, I mean, there's stuff I see from them online that still resonates. I mean, I wouldn't go out of my way to read what they do or go, check out videos on their site or anything like that. But they definitely have a market that works for them. They make a lot of money.
It's the only thing that I consume of theirs at all. And it's not, I don't have like a moral opposition to them. I know some people find them sexist or racist or whatever. This is a tough day to say this. I generally don't find them either of those things. I do understand they're coming from like certainly like a bro-y male point of view. That's like, but so are you, by the way. Like so am I. There's
well, I mean, like 10, 15 years ago, that was what sold in sports media. I mean, that is part of the reason I was able to have a successful website of my own was because of that. And that's also part of the reason why I basically nuked my site from the face of the earth when I was done with it. Because,
is it gone?
I mean, it's out there, but I basically pulled it all down because I was like, I've written so many articles over the time that I had my site that there's guaranteed to be some things in there that were okay in 2010 that would not be okay now.
Alex railed against the Jews in 2012. He couldn't stop it.
Okay, I never went that far.
So anyway, I guess I'll start by saying that. Like, I personally, like, I understand there are people who I respect and literally love who hate Barstool. I don't carry that vitriol personally.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you in that I'm more or less apathetic to them.
Sure.
I certainly understand the people that will never, ever, ever give them a set of eyes. You know, they'll never give them a click. I get that, man. Like, I can totally understand why you'd be that way. And now, of course, they have somebody who gets in trouble for what did he do? He quoted a rap lyric that included the N-word.
Yes,
correct?
and then apparently, so I watched the clip, and it's like one thing I will say that gets somewhat conflated in these situations is you'll see a lot of articles that say, so this is where I'm going to be on the wrong side of history because I want to talk about this Glenn Kuiper guy too. And
don't play the audio.
I'm not playing the audio of any of these. We're not.
Okay, I've heard the audio on this.
And by the way, I think Glenn Kuiper, meant to say, so Glenn Kuiper visited the Negro League Museum, which is by the way, my understanding of that word Negro is that it was never a slur, but it's still, because it's not the term of preference now, it feels weird to say. I did a podcast many years ago with a comedian named Greg Proops, this was, by the way,
who used to be on Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah,
yes.
and so I did a live recording for his podcast. It's called like The Smartest Man in the World or something like that. It's very funny because he described a basically like piece of shit audience member, and I was like, oh, that's fucking. It's like baseball hat, T-shirt, and I was like, oh, that's me. Like you've nailed me exactly.
Yeah.
But he came up to me after the show to thank me, and he's like, hey, do you smoke weed? He tried to give me weed. I was like, no. He's like, do you eat weed? He had like every variety of weed to give me, and I was like, I don't consume
suppository.
Weed. Yeah, yes. And then he was like, okay, well, do you have a podcast? I'll do your podcast. I was like, yeah, I have a sports podcast. He goes, do you like Negro League Baseball? And I'm like, I don't know a lot about it. And he's like, I know so much about it. And so maybe I can post that somewhere like he did. It was fucking amazing how much that guy knew.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
He's
not like a big sports guy either. He just happens to know a lot about Negro League Baseball.
Yeah.
So anyways, Glenn Kuiper goes and visits this him and Dallas Braden, who looks like the person who would be saying this. If you just saw these two guys, and you're like, which guy slipped up and used a racial slur? But
Dallas Braden looks like a cartoon character. This phase in his life. He used to be a pitcher for the A's. He was a pretty good pitcher for a while.
Yes,
he worked for ESPN for a little bit. Now he's just on the A's broadcast. But I mean, there's no easy way to describe him. He wears the Newsies hat. He's got a beard that looks like it just got electric shocked.
Yeah, he looks like his beard got electric shocked, but his family's not allowed to use electricity.
He looks like the sidekick to like a bully in a movie.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, he's like if they made a sequel of Home Alone, like Home Alone 4 now, he would play.
He'd be one of the bad guys.
Yeah, he'd be the not Joe Pesci bad guy. What's Marv? He'd be Marv.
He does kind of look like
modern
that.
Marv.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in both these cases, so Mincy, again, though by what I consume from Barstool is they have a channel called Foreplay, which is, by the way, great name for a golf channel. And they do like these scrambles with professional golfers. And they're like interesting. They have interesting guys that talk about golf. I consume that on a rare occasion. Other than that, like, there's comics that have worked for Barstool that I find funny, but like not.
Yeah.
Francis Ellis is the guy I'm thinking of.
The farther you get away from the top of Barstool, the more palatable
Sure.
it all becomes. But at the top, it's kind of shitty.
Yeah, and so by the way, I think Dave Portnoy is kind of annoying, but he did come out and defend. He's like, I can't do anything. We fucking sold to a major corporation. I don't think you should be fired. Not my choice anymore. Did I sell out? Yes, I sold out. I sold out for a lot of fucking money. I appreciate him owning that, right? Like, because I think a lot of people are like, well, you're like a free speech guy. You shouldn't be firing this guy. And he's like, I don't want to fire him, but we fucking have other obligations now as a fucking.
I mean, I would say a counterpoint, not to Portnoy, but just this guy in general. This guy quotes a rap lyric that has the N-word in it. Dude, if you're quoting rap lyrics that have that type of language in them, you just censor that part out.
So earlier in the song, my understanding is he used the word ninja.
Okay.
And fucked up on the second attempt. And by the way, it was a live stream. If this was on a recorded podcast, if this was you and me, we would just fucking edit it out. It wouldn't exist. So Glenn Kuiper goes to the Negro League Museum. He's describing it. And then
very inspired, apparently.
In the way that he pronounced it felt like it was a stumble, not necessarily like, I don't think in his mind he was saying. And by the way, so he says it in the broadcast. He comes back and apologizes.
When I listened to the audio of this, I mean, he's basically just on their pregame show, the Oakland A's pregame show or whatever it is, somewhere in between the action, talking about what they did that day. And he says they went to the Negro League Museum, but it does not sound the way you want it to sound.
Yes. And but I will say, like, Dallas Braden does not react crazy. There's like, neither one of them react crazy. They keep talking about it. Maybe he notices that he fucked up the pronunciation, is just hoping that it's not fucked up. Maybe Dallas Braden is like, did I actually hear him say that? And trying to be a professional broadcaster.
Braden actually came out today or yesterday and in so many words basically just said, a lot of times you're sitting there, you don't even listen to your partner. That's effectively what he said, which is kind of like, if that's your only defense, you know that it's a bad situation. Like, just leave me out of this, man. I didn't say the word.
Got it.
I didn't say it. He said it.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do that with you one day. Like, you really fuck up. I didn't even hear him, dude. I
tune out sometimes. I go in and out.
Yeah. So I thought this was, in both these situations, Dave Portnoy coming out and actually defending this guy who he had to fire. Like, that's the corporation
said you got to fire him.
Yes.
Yeah. Pretty. I think that's. I understand, even if you're just reading off a sheet of paper. I mean, I remember this, like, this goes back to, like, high school, but we would read books aloud in class in high school.
Oh,
were like,
yeah.
Like Huckleberry Finn, right? A lot of bad
words. I know
words.
my favorite day. No, I'm just joking.
A lot of words you can't say in there. And
you read them out loud, though, right?
You read it. You would kind of do the thing where, like, one person would read a couple pages, and then the person behind them would read a couple pages, and you kind of go around the class.
It was like Russian roulette.
I don't know. That was like the archaic movie day, right? Like the teacher got drunk the night before, and they were like,
popcorn reading.
What are we going to do today? We're going to popcorn read. Yeah. We're going to have these 17-year-olds just read aloud to each other while I sit there and shake off this hangover.
Let me ask you this, though, because in your class, did you read the word out loud? I mean, not you necessarily, but did people?
No, most people would say... they would either like substitute a word like ninja, or they would just skip over the word altogether.
Interesting.
Most people, and this was 20 years ago. I mean, people were
so I had the same
themselves.
Experience, except for we actually read the word, and it's not like I went to some fucking.
Fife, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's go look up the district's demographics. It's like a pretty diverse school. You wouldn't think so, but it's a pretty diverse school, but nobody was. So my one thing I will challenge around all of the reporting on this is none of these people were using the word. They weren't using a slur.
In a malicious way, they were not
said
using it, but
the word, but they were not using that word as a slur. Yeah. In both cases, they obviously, neither of them, well, I mean, whatever. The thing that gets annoying about this is I go like, we do this podcast, I fuck up words all the time. I'll listen back and I'm like, I fucked up a word I didn't even know I fucked up. Thankfully, I think I've said the correct name of the Negro League Museum every time so far.
You've been pretty good.
Thank you. I'm over
at least from what I'm
enunciating.
hearing here. But if anyone else hears anything different, I would say you were pretty fucking bad.
I don't even listen to it most of the time. I don't even listen to
I'm out of here.
I don't even listen to it most of the time. So
no, I mean it's one of those things where it's like anytime you have a job like Glenn Kuiper does, or I guess even the Barstool guy, where you're doing something where you talk a lot.
Sure.
You're gonna screw things up here and there. It's tough when it's a word like that.
Of course.
I mean, because there are people that are gonna say like, hey, you don't screw that word up, right? You just don't. Like, and if you think you might, then you slow down enough so that you don't. You make extra care around a word.
Like I've been doing the entire time we've been talking about this. Basically, it's like I got to over enunciate, make sure.
You have to be you have to be careful.
Is true.
Like, because there are just certain things that people should not say, and that's one of those things, man. And,
so one thing I would hate to happen out of this is for there to be less knowledge. Like people are afraid to talk about the Negro Leagues because they're such an important part of baseball.
Yeah.
There's so many interesting players. There's so many interesting stories. And for that to get lost because people are scared to say this word and fuck it up, which, I mean, so right now Glenn Kuiper is suspended. I don't think he's been fired.
Yeah. I mean, Oakland is obviously a very liberal part of the country.
Sure. Well, I want to read so Bob Kendrick is the president of the Negro League Baseball Museum, a black man who hosted Glenn Kuiper that day.
Yeah.
He said, I'm aware of the unfortunate slur made by Glenn Kuiper. I welcomed Glenn to the NLBM yesterday, the Negro League Baseball Museum, and I know he was genuinely excited to be there. The word is painful and has no place in our society. And while I don't pretend to know Glenn's heart, I do know that my heart is one of forgiveness. I hope all of you find it in yourselves to do the same. So that's, by the way, this is like a much more eloquent version of what Portnoy did, where it's like, I think Bob Kendrick here is saying, like, very obviously that's not a word that used in a racist way we accept. I don't think he was fucking being racist when he did it. He obviously enjoyed the time, really loved hearing the stories, learning about Negro League baseball, and I forgive him because I think he deserves forgiveness.
Yeah, I think with every day that passed...
By the way, not to fucking put words in his mouth, because he did say something that I feel like was very complete, but it feels like a similar thing to Portnoy, where he's saying like, it was a fucking bad mistake.
It's a mistake that for a lot of people can be unforgivable, for sure. And when you go in the immediate aftermath of this mistake or whatever it might be that occurred, the internet was raging, as it tends to, and people were squarely divided on either side of the aisle. There were a lot of people that said Glenn Kuiper should basically never walk another day on this earth. And then there were people that were like, hey, it's very clear this guy screwed something up. Like, a couple years ago, Tom Brenneman, who was the broadcaster for the Reds, he got fired when he got caught on a hot mic between innings.
Yes.
Using a different word.
Yes, a word we are about to talk about.
We are about to talk about that you certainly cannot say today either. And the way that Tom Brenneman happened to be using that word was malicious.
Right.
He didn't think he was being recorded at the time he said it. That was a lot different circumstance, right? Like he was going out of his way to use that word in a derogatory manner.
Yes.
Where Kuiper, it's questionable. We don't know. We just don't know. We'll never know.
I think that the idea that Glenn Kuiper spent hours, he's this hardened, ardent racist who truly hates black people, but spent a day at the Negro League Museum, spent a career like becoming a steward for this game that's pretty diverse, maybe not as diverse. There's not as many black people as people would like to see playing baseball, but it's a pretty diverse game. He did all that to really get it out in one. It's just so unrealistic to me.
Yeah.
And it's also like a very believable mistake. It is. I mean, it is and it isn't. I definitely hear where you're coming from. It's a tough mistake to make. Like, to make that mispronunciation is so egregious. It just is, man. Like, I'm not. I think if you, I've been lucky enough to very rarely in my life hear someone use that word as a slur, like as a true slur. And I think if you listen to him, but I have heard it. And I think if you listen to him, I think it's very obvious to me he's not trying to use that word. He's trying to use another word. Now, there's an argument. I mean, I think like a reason why I feel comfortable saying the Negro League Baseball Museum is because that other word is not in my vocabulary.
Yeah.
It's not something I'm going to slip up and say. But so maybe that's like the one argument. But also, I think there's zero chance that he was like, today's the day. Today, like there's no way he's getting away with it, obviously. There's no way he thinks like,
I don't think he's going to get fired, but I think there is, at this point, it could go either way.
Sure.
And I think I would have to imagine, even if he accidentally said this, didn't mean to say it, if he were to get fired, he would understand. He would have to understand.
Yeah.
I think so. Like, it'd be one of those.
I think it sucks, though. I think, by the way, the Mincy dude, I think, is way more justifiably fired, even though I don't think that he's doing a thing that's like, why is he rapping? Like, what are we doing? It's fucking, we know what we're getting into. He's not trying to, in the same way, like talk about this institution of history that actually is empowering black people, right? Like, I think that's right. The thing is, like, I believe that going in, Glenn Kuiper's intentions are good. Mincy's intentions are entertainment, which is not necessarily bad, but it's not necessarily good. And it's, again, I find both to be like potentially easy decisions to make. I've said on this podcast, like, it's not like I've never sat in a car and been like rapped that word. I've made a point of not doing it in the past decade plus or whatever the correct amount of time is. My entire life. I've never actually done it. I'm lying. Don't fucking come after me unless you work for Barstool and you want me to get hired.
The few times I've mastered rap lyrics to songs, I have managed to censor that word out.
Yes, I understand that. I guess, like, to me, the thing is, to me, it's very obvious that in neither of these cases was there hate behind that mistake.
As far as we know.
Well,
we don't know. I mean, that's the thing. No one will ever know.
But we don't know.
It doesn't seem like there is.
That mistake. Okay, let me rephrase it then. To me, in neither of these cases is that mistake evidence of hate.
The thing about it is, and here's the really important part, it doesn't matter what we think, what you and I think. It matters what...
Well, we are Americans. That's not really how... We are fucking people of this world, though. It's not... I understand what you're saying. Like, it's the people who are offended get the most say. I understand that. But that's simply not how the world works.
But when it's a word that has such cultural implications, ethnic implications, when it is a word that's used against a certain group of people, the people in that group are the ones who matter most. Now, that statement you read from
Bob Kendrick.
From Bob Kendrick.
You can't remember his name because you are an ardent racist, but I remember his name.
The statement you read from Bob Kendrick.
I did some research on Bob Kendrick to make sure I wasn't fucking bringing up a piece of shit.
It's probably helpful to Kuiper. You know, like, he's basically saying, I forgive this guy.
But it's also the thing that I find the most endearing about it, the most important about it is he has no reason to defend Kuiper except for what he perceives to be his actual intentions. And it would be very easy for him to go, well, this is the fucking oppression we faced all along, and this is just another example of it. And I think that it's not an opportunistic thing for him to come out and defend the guy who just said the N-word on TV, unless he really believes that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it became such a story.
You got to drink more whiskey. We got to get you slurring.
It became
slurring
such a
in
story.
multiple ways by the end of this.
It became such a story that he had to say something, but...
Well, of course, because he was talking about visiting him. I mean, it was about his organization.
I mean, he had to say something, but...
But then there was, I think, a much less forgivable...
here's a guy that was using a word
and
for
what's fucked up is it's possible this will lead to less of a punishment. Is Bob Huggins... he was... So, I'm just gonna read the quote during an appearance on the Bill Cunningham show on News Radio. By the way, me reading for these, we got to get some video of these things, but I don't want to put this. I don't want this on video.
I'm glad you had the same thought as me because before we recorded, I was like, look, whatever we do, do not play
Yes.
the audio from these clips, man. We cannot have this going on.
Yeah, that's fine. So during an appearance on the Bill Cunningham Show on News Radio 700 WLW, Bob Huggins, this is an ESPN article, by the way, Bob Huggins was asked about his former in-city rivalry with Xavier during his time as the Cincinnati coach from 1989 to 2005. Any school that can throw rubber penises on the floor and then say they didn't do it, my God, they can get away with everything, Huggins said in the interview. Cunningham then responded and said, I think that was transgender night, wasn't it? Huggins then said, what it was all those F slurs. Yeah, see, I did it. Those Catholic F slurs, I think. And so I think this is exactly exemplifies what I'm talking about. This is a hateful use of that word.
Did you hear the radio interview? Did you hear the audio?
I did not.
I would encourage anybody
Let's play it right now.
Anybody who, whether you're just finding out about this now or if you've heard about this story already, go listen to the audio from this radio program, because these two guys that are interviewing Huggins they're very chummy with him, right? And it becomes almost like there are three guys just sitting at the bar shooting the shit.
Sure.
And they're aligned with him. When he drops this word twice, they are on his side. One of them even like yucks it up and says something along the lines of like, he's the best, isn't he? Referring to Huggins.
Gotcha. So then in the audio, because I have not listened to it yet.
Yeah.
But my read of this is that when they said, I think it was transgender night, wasn't it? That sounds like that's not said in like a historical record sense.
No, they're definitely
like, I think it was
they're
transgender night.
making a joke,
right?
What they consider to be a joke, and in this part of the country, I mean, it's interesting because Huggins is, he's one of the longest tenured coaches in college basketball.
Sure.
He's a legend when it comes to college basketball. He's one of the winningest coaches in college basketball history, and in West Virginia, this sort of thing is probably not as big of a deal as it would be in a lot of parts of the country, not just here. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast outside of the Seattle area, this might not even be a big deal to you, because I know in other parts of the country it's not as big a deal. But especially in a place like West Virginia or even in Cincinnati, where this interview was technically being conducted. So I think you're right. I mean, I think he might get away with being able to keep his job out of this, but it's hateful language, man. And
to me, this offense is so obviously worse than either of the two things we were talking about. For sure. A guy that like I understand there's like this thing about saying it in a rap song, but the minimum requirement to like listen to and know the lyrics of a rap song and to be able to rap along with the song is some appreciation for that artist, who is, in this case, I don't even know who the artist was, but presuming they were using that word in a song, a black artist. And that doesn't give you free reign to use any language you want. I'm not saying that, but this is not coming from a place of appreciation.
No, and if Bob Huggins is saying things like this on a radio program, now granted, I mean, just based on the tone of the conversation, this dude might have forgot he was even on the radio in the middle of all of this. And he's an older guy with some health issues, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But if he's saying these things on a radio program, he's certainly saying them to the kids he coaches, right? Yeah. And you can't be saying that to the kids you coach. You just can't. I know. I think this particular word, as opposed to the word we were just talking about, this word is so different, because even if you go watch movies from a decade ago, this word is still being used in the context of jokes all over the place.
I mean this year probably. Maybe not movies because it's Hollywood, but like there's comedy specials and stuff. And I don't even, by the way, like I think there's a version of using this word on stage, even as a straight guy, that's not, like, to me as a comic, I'll listen to and laugh and enjoy and find it acceptable. I'll acknowledge, for the sake of the throat clearing necessary for this, that I'm not the person who's going to be offended by it. But I think that I heard a very compelling, because I grew up in a time, like, in the Northwest my whole life, you two, it was never okay to use the N-word. But there was a time in my life where it was pretty acceptable to use gay slurs, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think anybody our age, even people younger than us, would be lying if they said they hadn't used a lot of those derogatory terms.
I can't believe you would do that, Alex. This was a trap. No, but I heard like one of the most compelling things I ever heard about that was from gay people saying like, that's like the N-word for us. And I took that to heart and was like, okay, well at that time, like, not to say like I said, I still think there's humor in saying something just grotesquely inappropriate, but I took that to heart. And then I did hear a comedian, I think it was Godfrey, the comedian Godfrey, who's like a fucking tremendous comedian, who said, I don't think people should be using that F slur, but to call it like the N-word is completely inaccurate. And I'm paraphrasing or butchering what he said, but it's like, I can't pass for white. If you're a gay man, you could pass for straight. So like, to me, that opened my eyes. I'm always trying to feel like, hear new perspectives. Either way, that's not to say that the word is any better. It's just, I don't know if it's the same, but in this case, it was very obviously used in a tremendously hateful way, in a way that as a country, I'll be honest with you, like I found a lot of the stuff, this like, there's a pretty common narrative going on right now that like we're facing, like there's Nazis everywhere is like a thing that, you know, and I'm pretty skeptical of that, to be honest with you. But these like last couple weeks, this time since the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light ad came out, and people who I've been like, maybe I don't agree with them politically, but I'm like, this is an independent thinker who's like definitely not hateful, and people who think they're hateful who are wrong, who have been on the wrong side of this, have been like, they better fucking apologize, blah, 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 blah. This like very hateful shit is like something that I just like, I mean, maybe I'm just a dumb, ignorant white bro, but like I fucking haven't seen that in my life.
Yeah.
And even that issue, and I'm like, this is, in the wake of that, to me, this feels so much worse than what either of those other guys were doing.
Well, you know, I think a lot of people are just, they are very resistant to change, right? And like we were just saying, I mean, we grew up where...
in an Indiana town. All right, why am I ruining this? I'm having a serious moment.
No, we grew up being able to say words like this that were derogatory towards certain groups of people, man. Like we were, that was okay. It's on, you can go watch a show like The Office or Friends and they still have those types of words in there. They're censored out now.
Yeah.
But at the time, 20 years ago, it was still okay. And the people that still defend language like this, look, if someone says, no one has to approach you personally and say like, this offends me, please stop saying it. If we as a society kind of determine that something is offensive to a certain group of people, and we as a society decide like, hey, maybe it's not okay to say that shit anymore, then don't fucking say it.
Yeah.
Like, just don't fucking say it. But the people that want to continue using that language, they're lazy. I mean, and they don't want to change. And that's probably the main theme here is like, hey, I say this word because occasionally I'll tell a joke that includes it, and that's the only time I can get people to laugh at something I say.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm just the same useless piece of shit as everybody else.
Yeah, I guess where I get defensive, and I think I should be very clear, which is this is a specific use case, is I think that sometimes what happens is we start to lump this into like Quentin Tarantino wrote Django Unchained, right? You've seen this movie, I assume?
I have seen the movie.
Okay. Did I turn you up or me up?
Good movie.
Django Unchained's phenomenal. Quentin Tarantino wrote a lot of fucking N-words into that script, right?
Yeah.
So I guess like that's kind of the way that I view comedy that uses that stuff. But again, just because comedy is allowed doesn't mean you should even be able to go repeat the comedian's joke at your office. It's a different situation when you're a fucking professor, a student, a coworker, when it's a performance art piece, which is the lamest way to describe comedy, but that is what it is.
Yeah.
It's different.
I would agree with you that it is performance art. And I would agree that's why like a movie like Django Unchained can be made and accepted, because it's a period piece. He's trying to reflect what times look like in that period, right?
Yeah.
Even for how crude it might be. And the same thing with comedy. This is why I defend like comedians, man. Like not just you.
We need you. We need you.
But there are a lot of people, we've seen it happen with Chappelle recently. And look, I mean, I'm not here to defend Chappelle, but the comedy, his art as a whole is worth defending, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we have to be okay with how art is perpetuated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that the guy in his backyard telling jokes to his idiot friends is an artist, because he's not.
Sure.
So he doesn't have the right to go do that.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. Like you'll see George Carlin, who I'll admit this is like a tough thing to admit. A lot of people will bring up comedy and they're like, "Oh, the greats, Carlin, Pryor, fucking Rock, Murphy," and I'm like, I don't know. I think Richard Pryor was phenomenal. I think Eddie Murphy, Raw and Delirious were like two of the first comedy specials I ever watched. They both start with just tremendously homophobic bits.
Yeah.
But I fucking laughed so hard at them. Chris Rock, early Dave Chappelle, like Louis C.K., these guys who say very offensive stuff. For me, Carlin never did it. But one thing that's unfortunate about Carlin, whether you like him or not, is that he was prophetic in a way and wise in a way that has made his comedy relevant generation after generation. And as the world changes, people on both sides, conservatives and liberals, by the way, on either side, hateful people, use his comedy as an example of why they are right and the other side is wrong.
Yeah.
And that stinks because, by the way, probably the first thing George Carlin cared about was getting a laugh.
Yeah. No, I mean, he was an artist in his own way, but art can be interpreted anyway. It's like with a painting, one person can look at that and see something completely different than a different person. I mean, that's the beauty of art in a way, and also can be the curse, because people can interpret it however they want to.
It's really rare that people look at a painting and they're like, I don't think trans people should use the bathroom that they want to use, though. You know what I mean?
No, I know. I mean, it becomes much more specific with comedy.
It's such a more articulate version of art, obviously, where like I think art like painting or even plays or whatever, especially like what if you just read The Crucible, you'd think like, wow, this is like an old like classic literature, like Shakespearean era play or whatever. That's from fucking McCarthyism, like it's an allegory for McCarthyism, and it's not even really that. Like, there's not really a big gap. It's very obviously an allegory for McCarthyism when you find out when it was written and stuff. And that's the shit where, like, comedy is, like, it's much more honest and in your face. There's a lot less, when you're watching a comedian, there's a lot less interpretation required.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it just gets back to people being so resistant to change. Like, a good example in comedy is Adam Sandler, right? Adam Sandler in the 90s he was everything, man. He was the funniest guy on the planet. The problem is 15, 20 years later, he's doing the exact same type of comedy, and it's not funny anymore. It doesn't resonate.
Did you watch his stand-up special?
I didn't watch his stand-up special, but I watched a couple of those Netflix movies, the original ones, and they were garbage because they're the same jokes.
Which ones are those?
Like, what's that one? It's like a takeoff of The Magnificent Seven, but I can't remember. The Ridiculous Six, I think it's called.
Gotcha.
And it's just, it's terrible. It's terrible. And it's those types. There's a couple other ones. He's got like a Halloween one, and there's a few others in
there. So he does Chuck and Larry, which feel what you want about that, but Big Daddy, which is one of my favorite movies ever, there's a gay couple in that. And they're like, it's a very pro-gay movie.
It's progressive in a lot of ways. I think as time goes by, with Sandler, those jokes landed in the late 90s, early 2000s. Sure. When you get to 2015.
The special's kind of good, I got to say. I wanted to hate it.
Okay, I can see how it'd be good. I mean, he's still a comedic genius. That doesn't change things. It's just there's certain things that your audience will change, and if you do not change with them, it'll be hard for you to get the laugh that you're seeking. Yeah. And I think that's what's happened with Chappelle. It's like, look, man, a lot of people were with you, even on some of this stuff in, when you first started talking about it, when it came to trans people. But as time has gone by and it's become the same joke over and over and over again, it's not funny anymore.
Yeah, so there's a couple jokes that he says that I find, I would never tell you which ones they are on a recorded medium, but there's some jokes that I find fucking funny. And I have friends who are of in the community, in the alphabet mafia, as he calls them. I will say I get kind of tired of him saying LGBT wrong, like as the joke. That's part of the joke.
Yeah, and a lot of people do that, and it's like, look, man, we know there's a lot of letters there, but you know what they are.
Yeah,
you know what they are. We know what they are. The joke isn't there anymore.
Yeah, but he, I have friends in that community who have been like, yeah, it was a fucking amazing special. And I'm like, oh, great, because I thought so too. I also understand why some people would be offended. The other thing that I wonder is the one, I think it was maybe the most recent one, is that Sticks and Stones? What's the most recent Chappelle? I think maybe Sticks and Stones.
I don't remember, yeah.
The one where he talks
definitely
about,
one of the recent ones, yeah.
Gotcha. So there's one where he ends with a long story about a friend of his that was a trans woman comic who committed suicide. And it's like, by the way, the story is like strange because it's like it goes from she was happy and resilient to she killed herself, and there's no like there's just like nothing in between, and it's like basically the allegation that he's making is that the bullies online made her kill herself. And not to say that that's not even true, but it's like, I don't know, just to me it feels like a kind of flattening of suicide as a topic, which we don't need to talk about it overall. But what is unfortunate is I wish that person was there to give her side of the story, to be like, this is like, yes, I fully support him, or no, I don't, because I think it's possible that he's taking some liberties. Though I find the story very heartwarming. Honestly, I found it beautiful. I've never been watching a comedy special and felt like emotionally moved to the point of like almost crying, except for that story. But I will say, like, I try to always be a skeptic, and I'm like, I mean, you kind of get to tell this person's story for them now because they committed suicide.
Yeah, I think with stories like that have a personal aspect to them, I totally get what you're saying. You know, like, let's say that person was still alive and they were there and they fully supported the way he told it. You know, he told it perfectly.
It's also possible they supported him at the time and could change their mind now as they became a more evolved human being. Also.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think there's an aspect of, again, when you have a platform that speaks to a lot of people, there's more responsibility that comes with that than you might understand, right? Like you might not, like, you might be telling this person's individual story perfectly, but the way that people interpret it, again, because art can be interpreted any type of way, it might come off very poorly. And I think that's where you have a responsibility, not just as a comic, not just as an artist, but as human beings, to represent people in the way they want to be represented. Sure. You know? And again, it just gets back to, there's so many people that are, it's like, okay, we've all worked with people, I think maybe in the last few years, that just like to swear for swearing's sake, right? Yeah. Like, it used to be you would never, ever fathom cussing at work, right? Like, that just was not a thing you would do. But now people cuss at work all the time. You know, you cuss to your boss. No one cares anymore. It's just like,
I also wear basketball shorts. I mean, now I'm fucking unemployed. I really wear basketball shorts now. But I was
Look
wearing
where that got you.
Yeah, I know. Fuck. If I was wearing a suit on Zoom every day, maybe I'd still be employed.
But I've definitely worked with the people that are like, they come in and they're like, I'm just going to swear for swearing's sake. And it's like, we all agree you can swear at work now. Like, that's a cool thing that you can do. Like, don't stress about saying fuck. No one cares, right? But the people that just like overdo it, you still have like kind of a bad feeling towards them, right? Like, it's too much. And it's almost one of those things where it's like, when we kind of decide that certain parts of our language can be eradicated. Like, when you and I were growing up, we didn't hear the N-word, but I guarantee you there were people out there that thought it was still okay, because we were only a generation removed from that word basically being okay.
Also, like I said, I grew up in a diverse city. When I lived in Auburn, Washington, I had a neighbor who went to Enumclaw High School.
Yeah.
And I remember it was 2008, and I was Like, so my roommate at the time was like a fake country guy. He was
a lot of those in Auburn.
Well, he grew up in Kent, Washington. He lived in Yakima, Washington, and he put a Confederate flag on his truck. I'm not sure which part of either of those cities are fucking under the Mason-Dixon line, but so he would, like, a lot of his friends were these like Enumclaw country folk, right?
Yeah.
Which is Enumclaw's a bizarre place. If you're not from Washington State, which is most of you live in Washington State near Seattle, but if you don't, Enumclaw is best known for a guy dying from being fucked in the ass by a horse. That's enough for you.
An executive at Boeing, not just some guy. It's not. He was like a kind of well-to-do guy.
I've actually recently done a decent amount of comedy in Enumclaw in Boeing, and very fun to dance around that topic.
They'll never shake that one.
Yeah. So this guy, he's dating our next door neighbor, and Obama gets elected 2008. I'm in college. And we're just like, we weren't even talking about anything like that. And he goes, I remember he's like leaving our house and he's like, yeah, now that we have an N-word president. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Like I've to that point in my life, like rarely heard the N-word used as a hateful slur. And I was like, oh, this is like, it's crazy. It's also like my friend Greg Beechler, the aforementioned Greg Beechler, the bad diabetic flyer. He's a black man. He grew up in rural Colorado, parts of Michigan around Detroit, but some of them are not Detroit, right? And he's like, yeah, I used to get called that all the time. And I'm like, well, that's not the experience. As a white man, that's not my experience, is seeing, but it's like, of course, like the I don't get to see it all. And so...
And also, like, I mean, up here especially, I think it's really important, and because you travel around for comedy, but Washington State as a whole is in a bubble. Even the people here that are like the fake country people,
sure,
that put the Confederate flags up and stuff like that, they don't really understand what it's like in other parts of the country.
Yeah,
it's a completely different world out there.
They want a thing that they don't actually like. They want the reason they want America to be great again. They want it to be 1950. They want us to be driving carbureted vehicles with fucking black and white TVs. There was a time when they like ruled as like in a local economy, local government, and I mean, by the way, we're back to drinking on the podcast. I feel a little rambly right now because I started drinking before the podcast, but it's fucking annoying. Like you're I get wanting to be able to fucking pull up and have a white lady in fucking roller skates give you a burger, but it's 2023. Get over it.
Yeah, I mean, this just goes back to my point that like there's so many people that are resistant to change, and they want these good old days that like don't exist. Like, I'm sorry you peaked in high school, but like,
right.
The world is going to keep moving. The world is going to keep moving. Like, look, if you want to hear that language still, there are plenty of movies that you can go watch that still include that, and you can laugh along with them. But like, you can't go to the store and talk like that and have people accept you. That's the thing. It's like, look,
you were making a great point with swearing, which is swearing has its place. It still feels inappropriate in the workplace in the same way that you should feel bad. Whatever Chappelle's joke is, you should not be telling that joke at work. Like, or if you do, you should be saying it under your breath, right?
It's like the Office episode where Michael Scott is trying to recount the Chris Rock stand-up, and he tries to tell the joke, and then he gets in trouble.
I do want to say, to defend The Office, the show, that episode was written by Larry Wilmore, and Larry Wilmore was Mr. Brown in that episode.
No, I mean, I
love Larry Wilmore. That's the only reason I even bring it up.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of humor in those situations. Like, there is still a lot of humor in those situations if they're done right. The problem is the people out there who want to use this language, they're not doing it right.
Sure, of course.
They're never going to do it right. They're not like, they're just not equipped to do that. Like, they're just not. They're not the artists.
And Larry Wilmore should have taken over The Daily Show. All right. We should do the home run game. I don't want to talk about any of these fucking topics.
We definitely went long on those, but
that's fine.
But they're tough topics, man. Like, that's the real life that we live in, man. Just trying to understand those types of topics.
Well, and what I really hate the idea of is two guys making mistakes, two not hateful guys, to our knowledge. Their use of this word is not evidence of hate.
Yeah.
Or it's limited evidence of hate. being affected negatively, severely, and a guy like Bob Huggins keeping his job while he is being outwardly hateful towards a group
You
of
can
people.
fire Bob Huggins.
Yeah, I fucking dude. I mean, genuinely, I hope if
He
he's-
should get fired.
Absolutely,
But where he lives
it'll help.
and the cachet he has as a coach might keep him from getting fired.
You might become fucking governor of West Virginia. Okay,
I have one at the ready.
we're playing the home run game. We should make some music for the home run game. By the way, we're working on this kind of stuff.
We should, because when we take this stuff live, we're gonna have to play. I assume we'll have to play this game like with the audience. They'll have to like throw somebody at us, and so we're gonna have to really play this up. But I have a guy for you. I'm gonna go ahead and make myself go first.
You go ahead, Alex.
This is a former Mariner legend, I would say. He earned the right to be a legend. When I looked him up today, I was surprised to find that he's already 50 years old, because it does not feel like he's too far removed from his playing days. You will, of course, remember this guy, Raul Ibanez.
Oh, Raul.
50 years old now. Can you believe it? But Raul, great career, I would say, and surprisingly great career, because he wasn't like a huge prospect. He was a Mariner originally, came up with the Mariners, made it to the bigs in 96, goes off to Kansas City and gets like a regular role in Kansas City, plays pretty well there.
Sure.
The Mariners want him back, because that's what they do. They always want guys back after they get good
ever.
somewhere else. And he does come back to Seattle.
I can't believe Chris Taylor has not made it back to Seattle.
Yeah, he's that's actually kind of surprising.
Yeah.
But he's scuffled. He hasn't been good enough.
Yeah. Well, it seems like that's a perfect time for the Mariners to pay him
Now's the
$25
time.
million
Now's
a
the time,
year. Yeah.
So Raul comes back to Seattle, has a second stint here, does very well in his second stint here. Unless you watched his left field defense, which wasn't very good.
Yeah.
In 2005, I was surprised to find he played all 162 games. That does not happen very often anymore. And then he actually prolongs his career beyond Seattle, goes to Philadelphia.
Oh, man, you forget about the Ibanez Philadelphia years.
Actually plays for the Yankees briefly. And then I totally forgot he came back in 2013 for a third stint with Seattle. I forgot about the third stint.
I feel like I remember the third stint.
A single year. It was just a single year. And then he goes on to the Angels and then actually finishes up in Kansas City again. So he bounced around a little bit.
How many seasons is that in total?
This is crazy. I did not realize it was this long, but 19 seasons.
God damn. How old was he when he came up?
He was 24 years old in 1996 when he made it to the bigs.
So he's 43 when his career ends?
40, yeah, his age at the start of the season was 42. So 42 or 43. And that was in 2014. So, I mean, it's been 9 years. It doesn't feel like it's been 9 years, but it's been 9 years.
I want to guess one All-Star appearance.
You were correct. In 2009, at age 37,
Yeah.
with the Phillies, he finally makes it to the All-Star game. Yeah.
Wow. But a guy that, like, I feel like that 162 is, like, pretty healthy his whole career. Terrible defender, I think, the vast majority of his career.
Yeah, I don't have his defensive numbers in front of me, but I can just tell you from what I saw.
Yeah.
Not a great outfit. It's interesting because I remember in 96, he comes up as a catcher. He came up through the minors as a catcher. And then they basically are like, we got Dan Wilson. We have no place for you as a catcher. So we're going to play you at first base. We're going to play you in the outfield. And that's
I also feel like as an outfielder, I
career.
don't feel like he had an incredible throwing arm, which makes me surprised that I guess I'm surprised to remember that he.
Yeah, he basically comes up and he's like relegated to wherever they can find time for him as a DH,
Gotcha.
Corner outfielder, first baseman. He does finally catch a game in 1999, it looks like, according to Baseball Reference. But it doesn't look like he spent much time there. He caught like a game or something like that.
If he was a career catcher, if he put up his career as a catcher, he's a Hall of Famer.
He'd probably be a Hall of Famer, yeah. If he put up these offensive numbers over 19 years as a catcher, absolutely, he would be a Hall of Famer. I would have to imagine his defense as an outfielder limited his career WAR.
Oh, it's got to be low.
Yeah.
It's got to be low. So my guess, I'm going Raul Ibanez in a healthy year is like a 15 to 20 home run guy. I'm walking through the Alex process.
It's a good process.
15 to 20 home run guy. My suspicion is that 14 of those years he was a full-time player, probably platoon and like sub guy, pinch hitter the last couple years. So I'll say through those first 14 years, I'm doing the math in my head, but even that puts us at like and probably like some partial years at the beginning. Ah, man, I feel like those first couple of years put us around I'm going 245.
Pretty close.
Okay.
It's 305. You're off by
okay.
60, but it's a big number.
That's a pretty good number. That's better than I expected.
I would say that using my process helped you.
Yes. It's tough because here's the
thing about Raul. His first 5 seasons, 6 seasons, even his first in KC, like the most games he played was 104 games. So you were on the right track, but he didn't play as many full seasons as you estimated.
I bet he wasn't not healthy for most of them, though. I bet he was like platooning.
Yeah, he was a platoon guy for the first few years.
You say platoon weird.
Yeah, sorry. He was a platoon guy the first few years.
Did we address this last week?
We
okay.
did. Not a few weeks back.
Platoon.
And then towards the end, he wasn't playing a ton. But in the middle there, yeah, he played a lot. The most home runs he ever hit in a season, 34 in that All-Star season of 2009. In 2006 with the Mariners, he hit 33. So he had some big...
Is 2009 a Phillies... Is that one of the Phillies World Series years?
It might be.
Because that was like the Shane Victorino, Pat Burrell.
I think it probably was.
Probably Doug Glanville maybe on one of those teams.
2009, they lose the World Series to the Yankees.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, that was a pretty good guess. You were off by 60, but it was a big number.
Yeah. Okay. For you, I have a guy who was never a Mariner, though he feels like spiritually he should have been a Mariner at some point.
Every guy you pick who's not a Mariner, you say that.
Yeah.
But then I agree with you.
But so Marquise Grissom.
Oh, yeah, an Expo.
Yeah, and we've picked a lot of Expos. I don't know why you and I feel like we both have an obsession with the Expos.
You've gone Cliff Floyd. You're just like going down the 90s Expos roster.
I loved, if there was a team that could be my second team, although my second team is the Chicago Cubs, but if I could have another second team, I've always had a soft spot. I won a lot of money on the Washington Nationals a couple of years ago, by the way. Like $1,000 on the Washington.
What did you bet on?
Just futures to win the World Series.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. So 17 years, plays for the Montreal Expos, the Atlanta Braves, the Cleveland, we'll call them the Guardians because we've talked about enough slurs in this, the Milwaukee Brewers, the Milwaukee Beer Makers. We don't want to talk about too many slurs.
When was his last year? When did he finish?
2005 with the San Francisco Giants.
Towards the end, I don't remember him being a big factor.
I do want to say, so my wife and I watched the FX series Dave, which follows Lil Dicky.
Lil Dicky, yeah.
And he referenced in a recent episode, we haven't watched the most recent one, or maybe the last two, but in a recent episode, there was multiple references to the song White Dude, which is a very funny song. He's a very funny and talented rapper. In the video for White Dude, he's wearing a Deion Sanders Atlanta Braves jersey.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty fucking cool, which I have a new appreciation for after you explaining how little time he spent in Atlanta.
Was that me who explained that?
Yeah, it was like a half a season, right? Or am I thinking of a different...
Maybe somebody else. I don't remember explaining this to you.
No, we did.
I mean, I don't know. I forget a lot what I say. I say things and then immediately forget them. But no, Deion was in New York as a Yankee, and then he wasn't in Atlanta.
Oh no, it wasn't Deion Sanders. It was Kenny Lofton, I believe.
Kenny Lofton. Yeah, he was there for one season, like 97.
Yeah, so 3 years in Atlanta. My bad. When he played for the
Deion
Falcons,
he had a very interesting Major League Baseball
Deion.
Okay, Marquise Grissom.
I've lost all respect for Deion Sanders. I take it all back. And Lil Dicky. Fuck them both. I'm out. It was Kenny Lofton.
Marquise Grissom, somewhere at home I have his rookie card from 1990.
A guy who's like, I'm going to see if I can pull it up while we're on here, but like an uber prospect. Like
the Expos, I distinctly remember, they had a lot of good players with rookie cards in 1990. They had Larry Walker, they had Marquise Grissom, and they had Delino DeShields. All three of those guys were going to be like the future of the Expos. And then, of course, much like the Mariners in 94, the Expos were really fucking good.
Yep.
And then the strike happens. The Mariners, it could have been a Mariners Expos World Series.
Would have been amazing.
Just like Bizarro World. And instead the strike happens and ruins all hope of that. But no, they were a fun team in the early 90s, and Marquise Grissom was certainly a part of that. God, he plays until 2005, and that is 15, 16 seasons.
It was 17 seasons.
Okay, 17 seasons. Yeah, because
he made his
came up in
debut
89.
in 89.
Yeah,
and then,
But he was probably a part-time player for like 4 of those, maybe. So like 13 full seasons. And he's not a big home run hitter. He's probably like 15-ish, maybe 20. I'm going to say 195.
Pretty good. 227.
Okay. I should have gone higher. I was thinking my initial estimate was like 220, but take it down from there.
So career high, 23 home runs, 1996 Atlanta Braves, 13th in the MVP voting.
Yeah.
Which actually he ranks in MVP voting in 4 seasons, 2-time All-Star, 7th in Rookie of the Year voting, won 4 Gold Gloves.
I'm surprised he won 4 Gold Gloves. I didn't know it. That's the thing about 90s baseball and a team like the Expos. No one ever saw them. Mm-hmm. You never saw the Expos play.
I feel like in those times, too, it was just like, oh, that guy's really fast. He must be a great center fielder. Not to say that Marquise Grissom was or wasn't, but do you remember the dude that played for the Mariners? I think his name was James Jones.
Oh, from a few years back, yeah. Who became a pitcher.
Well, he was a pitcher.
Career, yeah.
He was a pitcher in college.
Yeah.
He played for the Long Island University, I believe.
I think you're right. I think it's Long Island University.
He
lefty, speedy.
Yeah, and he was like incredibly fast, and I think this is him. So he plays
2 seasons with the Mariners.
2 seasons with the Mariners. I don't think did he ever pitch in a game, or did he just
No, he
pitch in the
basically
minors?
he pitched in the minors.
But he was a guy who was like so fast, like maybe the fastest player in baseball when he was playing.
Yeah.
Horrific defender. Bad routes to balls, bad reactions.
Yeah.
Just like every defensive metric hated him, but I bet you in a different time in baseball, he'd be considered an elite defender because he was like, you'd see him make plays where you're like, he has no business getting to that ball. And then you'd see him miss balls where you're like, how did he not get to that fucking ball?
Until Moneyball came around, you just assumed fast guys were good defenders. Because you had no point of reference. I mean, no one ever could watch games on TV the way that they can now. It was all regional. So you would maybe see your home team and whoever they were playing, and that's about it.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I think that's it. By the way, I thought this was going to be the shortest episode we've done. It's still going to be an hour 45, I think. So we fucked up, Alex.
Yeah, we did. We went real long on some topics.
Yes, we did. All right. Thank you guys for listening. We got to record an intro, but we'll talk to you later.